Hi everyone, I'm Bill, and for this second podcast, I'm outdoors, taking a walk, lovely Berkeley day, and I'd like to talk a little bit about a big topic. I think I'm going to make this a relatively short talk and follow it up with some other ones because there's a lot of material here, and I don't want to overwhelm you with too much information. Let's try. So, the life myth, that's the thing I want to explore with you today. And within this larger topic of emergent or emerging process. Because one way to think about the life myth, say an individual's mythic process, is that it's probably emerging throughout life, not necessarily in every moment, but throughout one's existence. So, what is a life myth? I don't know there's any particular way to define it, but the life myth, as I've studied it and learned a bit about it, played around with it for many years, wrote a book about it, is this. The life myth can be considered one's main dream of life. Yeah? One of my teachers in process work, Mark Schupak, likened it to a main song of life, recognizable over time for its main theme, tone, melody. Yeah? So if you think about that, wow, how cool, a main song of life. Huh, wow, what could that be? What could that be? There's the question. So, like a nighttime dream, the life myth can be mysterious, not necessarily easy to grasp, understand. Yeah, that. And let me say a couple reasons why. It seems like the language of dreams, and I would extend that to the big dream, the life myth, is that its language is symbolic. And therefore, our attempts to think about it logically, linearly, rationally, may be limited. Crossing the street here. Let me not get run over as I try to talk to you. So, in a sense, we need to speak and think on its terms. Yeah? If we really want to relate to it, understand it, make meaning of it. I noticed that this quote from C.G. Jung comes to mind. Jung, founder of Jungian psychology, brilliant man, probably quite racist, but I think this quote says a lot. He said that the life myth, finding out what it was, he considered to be his task of tasks. Like the highest order of work is to find out, oh dear, we have a school festival. Lots of kids, lots of noise. They're playing a big game. Wow. How exciting is that? Yay. Anyway, life myth. Let me see if I can gather my thoughts. Playground. Looks like there's some kids having fun. I'm sure there's some kids having no fun, but that's for another day. Did you, how was it for you being in, grade school? I know for me it was a fairly excruciating experience. Maybe something to talk about, early education, so to speak. The things we learned, the ways we benefited, how we were traumatized. Great subject. Anyway, life myth. So with this main song or dream of life, it can easily, I've worked with many, many people on their mythic processes, it can easily both be continually arising in life, yeah, not in every moment, but sometimes a lot, sometimes daily, depending on who you are, the nature of your life process, your life myth. And it's really easy to not really understand it. Yeah? It's one of the confounding things about it. Wait a minute. How is it possible that this thing that can be accompanying me all through my life, and I basically don't understand it? And here's the one of the kickers. It's a process. It's a song. It's a dream that can have a significant impact and influence on your life. It could be argued, I could argue, that it's a main driver of life. And big impactor. And there's ways to align with a life myth, get to know it, befriend it. And there's ways to ignore it. Wish it would go away. Because the life myth often contains some of our deepest life struggles and problems, traumas even. And so why not? Why not say, oh my gosh, let me fix this issue? Yeah, very natural response. But what if the issue is deeply part of who you are? And let's say upon further exploration, it's not purely a problem. And here's one of the other kickers here, one of the other additions here. Let's say your life myth not only has your main problem embedded within it, let's say it also has the main solution in it, the main way how you can address this difficulty. Yeah. I don't know if that's every person's life myth, but the many people I've worked with, there's often something kind of difficult or problematic about the life myth. And wow, this solution. Pause for a moment. Interesting you? Hope so. I think it's a great topic. Let's see, should I say more? Yeah, I'll say a little bit more. So, one of the things, and I don't know if Jung, in a sense, discovered this or not, but it was, so let me back up. I think one of the things I mentioned in the first podcast is process work. Process work is something that I've studied and practiced for many years. And one of the roots of process work is Jungian psychology. So, we and I have borrowed a fair amount from Jungian psychology and thinking, and probably some of its failings as well. We've already probably borrowed some of those shortcomings as well. But one of the things that Jung discovered was that the early childhood dream is representative of the life myth. It's like a little snapshot of the life myth. So that's already a big thing. Starting to think about our earliest childhood dream, and again, thinking about it through the lens of symbolic thinking. Yeah? I'm going to sit on the side yard here. I'm home, a lovely home with Linda in Berkeley. So symbolic thinking. I think I'll say more. Should I say more now, or should I say more later about symbolic thinking? Maybe I'll say a little bit now. I can expand upon it later. So Amy Mandel, Arnold's wife, many years, has this illustration, which I think is just a wonderful one, using the example of someone who has a dream, a nighttime dream of kittens, little cats, oatmeal, yeah, a little starchy breakfast cereal that, some people eat, and blankets, yeah. So, logically, maybe not a whole lot that connects those, yeah, kittens, blankets, oatmeal, but if we think symbolically, kittens, oatmeal, blankets, we might come up with comfort. Yeah, if you have a dream like that, let's say you've been feeling anything but comfortable, you're overworked, you're stressed, and then you have a dream like that, and then you notice, oh yeah, and I did have a little moment of comfort the other day. I hugged myself, or my wife hugged me, or a friend hugged me, or the warmth of the sun, just for that moment when I was so stressed, it felt like comfort. Then you think, maybe life is suggesting to me comfort, more comfort. And I lean a little bit more into that direction of comfort, and I find helps. In my very stressful moment, comfort is nevertheless naturally arising as a response. So that's a little bit about symbolic thinking. So back to the early childhood dream or memory. If we start to think about the elements of the memory, let's say there was an early parent figure or teacher who was scolding or criticizing us, we were feeling very hurt, etc. So we already start to consider, what's the theme? The theme is like harsh criticism, feeling bad about oneself, let's say. That's a whole theme. And then you notice, wow, as a theme, that continues in my life. I continue to feel criticized. Or let's say it switches around and you notice in life that you have become the critic and people complain to you about how harsh you are. Maybe as a mythic process, that thing around criticism is continuing, and maybe there's deep things to learn about that. It's an important process. Criticism is a very important process. It's an important element in communication. Yeah, one example. Or let's say it's not a memory. Let's say it's an early childhood dream. Let's say it's an early childhood dream of, let's say it's an airplane. Yeah, I'm hearing an airplane overhead. And let's say the early childhood dream is, let's say there's a house on fire, it's scary, and then an airplane flies overhead, and then the feeling shifts. It's no longer panic and danger and fire. And then let's say all of a sudden you find yourself in the plane and you're overlooking the city. Okay? And then, here's my kitty. Kitty, do you want to say hi? Hi, baby. Anyway, that's Joey. Maybe I'll bring Joey into the podcast later. So, thinking symbolically, we may think, well, okay, a burning house. If we think logically, burning house, okay, something that's really dangerous, of course. But maybe it's also about something that's burning up, like identity, for example. And let's say in life you notice, let's say this is your dream, and you notice in life that you have moments in life where who you think you are, burns up sometimes. It's like, I thought I was a business student, or I thought I was a religious person, or I thought I was this or I was that, and then something happens and that house of identity burns down. That's one way to play a little bit, thinking about the symbol of what house is. And maybe for you, it really is about identity. But, I don't like to get this thing about this means that, because a house for you in symbolic terms may be very different than what it means for me, okay? But to continue with it, let's say it does somehow symbolically represent identity. And then you notice you have these moments of identity crisis where the thing burns up, and then you start having symptoms of altered states. Yeah, let's say that happens. Like you're confused, like who am I? But then you notice, God, am I having a mental health crisis? I'm starting to like get really into altered states of mind. But let's say you think, maybe that's a little bit like the airplane. Getting away from the earth, and you start to believe in this altered state, and you notice that you start to have a bigger perspective, like flying over the city, and you realize, wow, that identity that just blew up, that just burned up, it needed to go because that situation I was in was clearly not sustainable. And from this deeper perspective, I can see there's a better way. For example, a little example, I'm just kind of making that up as a little example of a dreaming mythic process. And then let's say that continues over and over again. And you start to learn that, wow, I have this strong tendency to build an identity, get really invested in identity, and then something happens and then the thing burns up. And then I usually start to have altered states. I start to feel drawn towards meditating. And then you notice you get a little quicker and you realize maybe it's not so much about getting so invested in identity. Okay, some, yeah. But then it's also noticing and believing in these parts of me, these transcendent ways that I can get a larger perspective. And let's say you start to really lean into that, and it makes you a family member, makes you a better friend, makes you a better team member, makes you a better community member, makes you a better leader, stuff like that. And you might find, well, there's some problematic, troubling stuff about a life myth where my identity keeps having to burn up, but the solution in it is embedded right in the thing itself. Altered states, transcendence, and a larger perspective. How cool is that? Maybe that's enough for today. I'm going to follow it up with some more, what do you call these? Podcasts. Podcast is brand new. It's my second podcast. And focus on the life myth. Quickly, I have a life myth book on Amazon. If you look on Amazon, the life myth, Bill Say, you'll find it. $3.99 US. There's also a Japanese version. If you're in Tokyo next month on the 11th, I'm giving a little half-day workshop on the life myth that my dear friend and colleague Kaori-san is organizing for me. And then a little bit later on the year, through the Process Work Institute, I'm giving a 5-part series class on the life myth with a freebie, free presentation preceding that. Anything else? Oh, if you don't have Kindle, and I don't blame you, just email me for a PDF copy of the life myth. It's, again, $3.99. Unless you can't afford that, then write me and I'll send it to you. Okay? Anyway, take care. Enjoy the day. Bye.